Today we're going to talk about 3 danger zones. Remember Hulk Hogan? You're in the danger zone, man. What did the Hulk say? It's the workouts, the vitamins, and the prayers. He was on to something with the last one, okay? 3 danger zones, and then we're going to talk about some dangerous words. Okay. First, let's begin with a little bit of an exegesis of today's gospel story. A lot of times people will pass this over, but the words are very important. The message is very important. If you're not accepted someplace, shake the dust from your feet in testimony against that town. Now, I suppose for many of us, we have no idea at how rich that symbolism is. Well, I found out how rich it is about 30 years ago. There was a book that came out by Thomas Friedman of the New York Times, that paper I love to hate. And he wrote a book called From Beirut to Lebanon. Some of you might remember, so this book came out 30 years ago, back in the 90s, and it talked about the Arab uprising in the occupied territories, the Palestinian uprising in those occupied territories, and there are still occupied territories, and there is still conflict in that area. The original uprising in the 90s was because the Palestinians believed that their children were losing their identity because they were coming in contact with Western culture through their association with the Israelis, their schools, their culture, their children, their literature. And so they began what was called the Intifada. And at the root is the word to shake the dust. Let's get this foreign culture off us. We're getting infected by it. And that's what the Intifada was all about. It was a culture war. We hear about culture wars. We're in a culture war today in our own country and in Western civilization. I don't know how many of us are concerned about the culture war and how it can infect us as Americans, but most especially as Christians, Catholic Christians. And therefore, we have to be careful as to who and what we come in contact with, lest we lose our own identity to an infection that can destroy our faith. What are some of the dangerous zones? First one, sorry to say it, it's our schools. They're danger zones because in schools these days, things are being taught which can be detrimental to our faith, number one. Why? We know that certain things are being taught in school that praise sexual practices that are not consistent with our Catholic belief. We have our young people in our schools believing that any sexual practice is fine. I can do whatever I want, as long as I feel good about it. I can have illicit sexual relations. I can even change the sex that I am. It's infecting our schools. Not only do we have to be concerned about our dangerous sexual presentations in the schools, but many of you have been hearing over these past weeks about critical race theory. Some of you might not know exactly what that is, but critical race theory says that we should view everything through a prism of race. Everything becomes racial. And what is being taught is that although the black race at one time was oppressed in this country, and nobody's saying that it was ever the correct thing to do, right now, black is good, white is bad. And so what do? Now you have conflict. Instead of what Dr. Martin Luther King said, we judge people by their virtue and not the color of their skin, we are now dividing people by race. Racism is an evil. So is reverse racism. And therefore, we must be attentive to what is being taught in our schools. And if you have children and grandchildren, make sure that you know what is being taught in the schools. I highly recommend private education. The Catholic schools, for the most part, the grammar schools. I can't vouch for the universities because, well, they're politically correct these days. Catholic grammar, Catholic high schools, they're places where we can trust that our children are being educated into a Christian view of life. There are also some charter schools in our own area which are giving an excellent education. So number one, be careful that your children are not infected with teachings that are antithetical to what we believe as Christians and as Americans. The second thing is culture. Culture. And we all live in a culture, whether we recognize it or not. And it's almost, I could say, the air that we breathe. The culture is the air that we breathe. St. Paul used the term, he said, the spirit of the air. What does it mean? It just surrounds us. It just surrounds us. We breathe it in. Let's give you an example. I read this week that Disney has changed its welcome message. The welcome message used to be, welcome ladies and gentlemen and boys and girls of all ages. Well, now it's a sin to recognize the difference between men and women and boys and girls. That's not politically correct, because everybody can be whatever they want to be, or a mixture of everything. So now the welcome is, welcome, dreamers of all ages. It's right in the culture. It's no longer binary, men, women, boys, girls. We're all dreamers of all ages. So an advertisement for this, I think it used to be, some of us might remember the Erector set. We used to build things with the Erector set, yes? Well, now they have Legos. I think that's the successor to the Erector set is Legos. Kids build something with these plastic blocks. Yes? We have some kid here that can verify what I'm saying. All right. You're not a kid, Charlie. Knock it off. All right. Now, because it was Gay Pride Month, they made all of the plastic pieces in the rainbow colors. So you think you're going to get your little boy, Wibbly Fair, or little girl, her Legos, and even the toys are sending out a message. The culture itself just seems to seep into our lives without us even having a clue sometimes as to what is going on. So culture is something that we have to be concerned about, but also politics. You think politicians are simply making rules and laws for your taxes? No. Or concerned about the border or the situation in Western Europe or China or Russia? No. They're also involved with morality, whether we know it or not. And so we've been hearing about cases where people are being charged with discrimination if a Christian baker doesn't want to bake a cake for a gay wedding. He's charged with discrimination. A woman florist, she refused to make floral decorations for a same-sex marriage. She's also being charged with discrimination. What happened to freedom of conscience, freedom of religion? So do you see how the politics plays into our lives, and all of a sudden, what do we have now? We have an attack on our rights as Americans, freedom of religion, and as Christians, we must do something, or forced to do something, that is against our conscience. Those are the danger zones, like the Hulk said. Three dangerous words. What's the famous D word that we hear now? Who's smart? Diversity. Diversity. That's the D word. Everybody says we have to be diverse. Now, it sounds very nice. It really does. You know, we're diverse. That's a nice thing. You know, we have all different kinds of, ethnic groups, different races. We're a diverse person. Except when you talk about diversity, first of all, you might have to remember that as you're being diverse, you might be denying somebody else what they deserve because they worked hard for it. Or because they're smarter than you are. And said to me, we're going to put you in school for neurosurgery because we want diversity. That's not diversity, that's insanity. Right? It sounds good. It sounds good. But what happened with diversity? We forget something that's more important for us as a nation and as a church. It's unity. Unity. That's why you see one flag with 50 stars. Yeah, we're a diverse group of people, come from all different parts of the world. But we are united in what? In our beliefs in America. We're united under the Constitution. We're united under the Declaration of Independence. We're united by our flag. I saw something very disturbing this morning on the news. Now, I personally, in my cell, my monk's cell, I don't watch television. It upsets me too much. But I went over to the wellness center. That's supposed to make me well instead of upset. And on the TV this morning, little boy and his mother are riding their bikes. The little boy gets off the bike, sees an American flag, picks the American flag out of the ground, goes like this and throws it on the ground. What? And the mother doesn't say, don't you ever do that again. That's private property, first of all. That's disrespect for the American flag. We cannot sacrifice unity for the cause of diversity. The same thing is true for our faith. Listen, we respect other people's religions. You have to. Of course you respect other people's religions. But one religion is not as good as any other religion. That's why Jesus died on the cross, to show us the right way. We can't say that anything goes and everybody's right. Just like in the nation, we believe in the Constitution, the Declaration. As Christians, we believe in the Bible. This is God's law. And that ain't diversity. That's unity. Jesus' prayer that all may be one. That's the prayer. That's what we have to strive for. The other one is inclusion. We're inclusive. What does that mean? We're inclusive. Does it mean that anything goes? Anybody can come into our group who wants to come into our group, whether they have the same beliefs we do or not, or act in ways that are appropriate or not appropriate? Let me just present this to you. I'll give you an example of inclusion. Suppose somebody wants to join the Knights of Columbus here at St. Agnes. And they announce that they are an atheist. Are the Knights not being inclusive? No. And they shouldn't be. There has to be demarcation. This is what we believe as a nation. This is what we believe as a church. This is what we believe as a group. And not everybody is entitled to enter into a group with whom they are at odds. Baylor University. They are a strict Baptist university. There's been a lot of kickback over there because they would not allow an LGBTQ club to exist at Baylor University. So they've made some kind of an arrangement now where the club can exist, but as a satellite without university official recognition. Now, we have the same going on at our Catholic universities. If you are against the teachings of the Catholic Church, if you're against the teachings of the Bible, you don't belong there. And inclusivity is no virtue. It's no virtue. It's dangerous. It causes infection. The last one is equity. Equity, it's a nice term, isn't it? Oh, we're all equitable. No, it's nice to a degree. We are all equal. We're equal where? In the sight of Almighty God. We are equal with equal rights. But God does not even look at us with equity. Did you know that? God sees us all as individuals with our own sinfulness and with our own merit. Now, some of you might have heard the expression, you will gain a high place in heaven. Did you hear that expression? What is that supposed to mean? It's been around for 1 million years, a high place in heaven. Why? Because as individuals, I got to stop a moment. Everybody thinks this is so equitable that everybody is going to heaven these days. What do you have to worry about? We're all good people. No, we're not all good people. Some of us are not good, and some of us are not going to go to heaven. Thank God for purgatory. Maybe some of us will make it by the skin of our teeth into purgatory. But when we start talking about equity before God, God loves each and every one of us in so much as we are lovable in His sight. And we share in God's love in the beatific vision as we are lovable in God's sight. Let me give you an example. Someday, I am going to die. You too, sorry. Am I going to be in heaven sitting in the same circle as Mother Teresa? I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, I realize that there's a big difference between me and Mother Teresa. And me and Pope John Paul the Great. There's a big difference. But I will see the beatific vision insofar as I am filled with God's grace. It's like a story they used to tell us about the milk container. You have a pint and a quart and a gallon. They're all full. But one has more than the other. And that's how it is, too. It's not all equity. And what this belief in equity means is that we're all entitled to the same things. And it does not reflect merit, and it does not reflect the need for us to work. Not just for our livelihood, but to work for the good of the country and to work for the good of our church. So these are loaded terms. They sound good, but they are lethal and they can cause illness, spiritual illness. A lot of people today, they want to be PC, politically correct. There's no great virtue in being politically correct. There's no salvation in being politically correct. The only salvation is PC, politically Christian. God love you.